Glen, thank you very much for joining me today. I am super excited to announce your appointment and joining the Kaleidoscope Board of Directors.
Thank you, Jason. I'm excited about the quality and value proposition that your investors bring, and I'm really excited about your leadership. And then the problem is we are not democratizing access. We're not opening up access to dollars that can change the game. And so I have a lot of confidence. I have a confidence that you're going to address a really big problem with good people.
Well, Glen, thank you very much for joining me today. I am super excited to have this conversation and super excited to announce your appointment and joining the Kaleidoscope Board of Directors. I couldn't be more excited to have this conversation. For people that don't know you, why don't you tell them a little bit more about where you came from?
Well, first of all, thank you, Jason. I'm so humbled, so excited. I'm excited about the quality and value proposition that your investors bring, and I'm really excited about your leadership. But first, I'll go back in time a little bit. I grew up in a small town, grew up in St. Francis, about 40 minutes north of the city. My parents were both educators, so your business and what you're up to is so important to me and so interesting to me. As a result of that background, my wife's father and her mother were a teacher and para, respectively. So education, public school education is all over our background. I grew up in this small town, did all kinds of things, shot hoops in the barn, rode horses, had a really cool experience. My dad was somebody who I considered my best friend and my accountability partner at the same time. And my mom was someone who really, the core essence of her leadership boiled down to whatever you do, give. And my dad was whatever you do, serve. Like that was what they modeled. And I think was so blessed to have that kind of role modeling. Two younger sisters, one 3 years younger, one 6 years younger. Went to St. Francis High School and then matriculated to St. Olaf College. And the best part of St. Olaf was I met my wife there.
That's awesome.
As a sophomore.
So tell me a little bit, Glen, about that. St. Francis, you mentioned blue collar, family upbringing. What'd you learn? What values? You talked a little bit about those values and maybe more what those values and how those influenced your decision to go to St. Olaf.
Yeah.
Like, why St. Olaf?
Yeah. Well, came up in a Lutheran family, Norwegian Lutheran family, way back. So there were some kind of natural fits, I think, with the St. Olaf experience. But the idea of going there wasn't like a slam dunk from the beginning. I think we grew up in modest ways, but also in ways that were kind of rich in love and faith and connectivity as a family. And it was an effort, like it was a real consideration to say, how do you pay for college? Me being the oldest, first time going through it for my parents. And so we threw everything in the kitchen sink at it. It was, I took out loans, my parents took out loans. And I applied for every scholarship I could back in the analog days where you had to kind of scratch and claw to find those things. I, in fact, remember one scholarship opportunity that was through my dad's school district, the Osseo Schools, and about 30 minutes south of where we lived. And so I applied for that, and they offered up a scholarship for one staff member's child. And then based on some of the academic affinity or interest I had, applied for things that I thought might tie to my future career. And so it was, anything and everything. And that was in an age when you really had what now looks like more affordable education, right? And still it was a stretch. And my parents did a lot of math, looking at what would it take to go to St. Cloud or the University of Minnesota, and what would it take to go to a private school. And based on some of the aid that the private schools would be able to afford, it became kind of a wash that I could at least stretch to get into this smaller private school, and turned out to be right for me in terms of class sizes and a lot of care from instructors. And I did not go to a college preparatory high school. No offense, love the place, but it wasn't preparing me like maybe the Edina schools might here in the Twin Cities, or a private school in high school. So that smaller environment probably helped me.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So for our listeners or viewers that don't know about your background and your career progression, obviously I've been following you for 20 years. You've been very influential in it, both personally and professionally. Had leadership roles at Lifetime Fitness, RedBrick Health, now at the Y. Could you tell us a little bit about your role at the Y and maybe why? I mean, there's a common thread I clearly see, but maybe share that thread with the people watching.
Yeah, it's interesting. If I went back to the early days at Lifetime and then at RedBrick, there was really, and oftentimes I think if you're looking at it from the nonprofit sector back to the for-profit sector, folks don't believe that there's as much purpose and mission laid into for-profit enterprise. And in fact, the two organizations that I spent the most time with before the Y, Lifetime and RedBrick, an extraordinary amount of mission and passion and trying to do the right thing. In fact, at Lifetime, I do remember how much we talked about the customer, the member's point of view, really almost aside from financial performance. And at RedBrick, it was pursue purpose together. So those two organizations, I think, coupled with mom saying, whatever you do, serve, and dad saying, whatever you do, mom saying, whatever you do, give, dad saying, whatever you do, serve, those all kind of formed a desire to do something that was more legacy and values driven. And I didn't imagine coming into a nonprofit at the time that I did. I was in my mid-40s, and I always dreamed that I would do something like it in my early 60s. Like maybe it would be the last thing that I did in a career sense. And it found me. And in fact, one of our common friends, Mike Garand, reached out to me after I had turned the search firm down at the Y, not knowing the depth of the mission and the values of the Y. He said, hey, knucklehead, what are you thinking? You ought to take a look at this. And so on the strength of that recommendation, I went back in and really dug in on the opportunity. And it was very clear that I could give and serve in this role. I loved leadership from a servant leadership perspective. I always loved catching team members doing things right, some of the kind of just core essence of leading other humans. And also, I had enough mentors in my life that helped me understand that vulnerability was an okay thing in leadership. And I saw and served leaders where vulnerability wasn't acceptable and saw what that meant. And just to be able to turn to the leaders you're serving and say, I don't know. What do you think? I think is a pretty powerful thing. And so, and in turn, Jason, I've watched you grow, and I'm always envious of your brain pop. Like you're one of the smartest dudes I know, and also so values driven. And so leaders like you have edified for me what it means to be a servant leader and why it's important to me.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. So as you think about Kaleidoscope, obviously super excited to have you clear the value you're going to have on us, but why? I mean, I think you talked to education, you talked about a little bit about maybe the challenges in present day. What do you mean by that? And what are you seeing, and why Kaleidoscope?
Yeah, well, let me start with why Kaleidoscope. I'm only interested at this stage in my career of affiliating with people that I love working with, that I respect. And when I look at the investment leadership you have, I mean, I was really, I've been following folks like Justin Koffenberg for a long time, and really interested in finding a way to intersect somehow with investor leaders like Justin, Jeff Hink, others that you have, and Joe Biller. These are people that seem to be leading for good, and that's really important to me. Second, I love serving entrepreneurs that share my values, or that I share values with, and you're the epitome of that. So when I think about those that I'd want to spend time with, serve, help take boulders out of a path for somebody, you represent exactly what I'd want to be spending time on. And then the problem is what's really motivating to me. Like I just see through the Y how much squandered potential we have in young people. We are not democratizing access. We're not opening up access to dollars that can change the game for these young people in the way that we should. And I think Kaleidoscope is, taking what is a very analog, old school business, and it's going to create an automation, a seamlessness, a fluidity that I think is really important. I love the growth path you're on. I love the team members I've met. I mean, you've got some amazing leaders on the sales and the marketing side. And so I have a lot of confidence. I have a confidence that you're going to address a really big problem with good people.
That's great, Glenn, and clear why you're going to make a great member of our board. As I and our board and investors were thinking about board members, one of the things that became very apparent to us was that we needed someone to round it out that had servant leadership, understood the actual problem that we were facing, and has the kind of value system that you have. So I am super excited, one, that you answered my call and to accept this opportunity. And two, I want to thank Mike for, one, making the call to you to talk you into the Y job, because I think the community, and I think a lot of people have benefited from you in that leadership position. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I look back, like I said earlier, I didn't think I'd do this job till I was 60. And thank goodness that wasn't the case. Like the last, 12 years have been, almost 12 years, have been the richest years in terms of professional development and finding purpose and trying to influence the community in a direction that is positive. And so, no, thank you for that. And it's really, honestly, such a pleasure to be considered for a Kaleidoscope board. This is, you and, as I said, the investors and leaders, such impressive people. And so I'm coming at it humbly. I'm going to do the best I can to support. But you got a tall order over there. Those are all a bunch of smarties.
Well, I appreciate it. And I do think the perspective you bring from DE&I and making and challenging us to think differently, to have conversations on race and the impact that certain things and legislation is going to have on the area we're in is really important. So I appreciate it. Thank you, Glenn.
Yeah, this DEI space is interesting, right? It's, once again, we've found in our culture that some of these things get politicized. And so I like to just boil it down to inclusion and belonging. We all want to feel included, regardless of how we vote or what political party or whatever, however we affiliate religiously. We all want to be included, and we all want a sense of belonging. And I think the scholarship space is a place where you can really advance belonging for young people. How cool is it when somebody can matter so much that they come out the other side with a scholarship to go to school, especially from maybe a first-generation college student, family's never been. You have that experience yourself where you were a first-generation, or your brother and sister and yourself. Man, how big an impact does that have on community in the long term?
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, Glenn, thanks again for the time. Thanks again for answering the call. As we close this out for our viewers, as you think about, you've done so much in your life, so much in your career, so much to be thankful for. At the end of the day, we're both sports fans. You think about championship banners. If your life were an arena, at the end of that life, what's your championship banner read?
Well, I hope it speaks to my faith and my family values. I hope it speaks to that I tried really hard as a dad, and I tried really hard as a husband, and that I served others. I look at you as somebody who I got to work with for a little while early in my career, and I'm so motivated by who you are and what you are doing and what you're becoming, and you're still becoming. And I really, looking back, I think the things that make me the most proud are to see leaders, whether they stay at the Y and become a CEO within the Y infrastructure movement, or whether they go and they become a CEO or a leader of merit in other places. That is motivating to me. And so I hope it speaks to a servant leader who supported leaders.
Well, I think it will. I think it already says that. Thanks, Glenn, for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jason.